everyone. I'm glad to see you. I'm Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. I just realized my hair needs work, and I also realized I don't have my pillow, so you all may only see the top of my head and my eyes. The thing that got me today was I haven't been working for 2 weeks, you see, and we've had a lot of company and other things that have been going on. And so I thought we were talking about an old subject. So right at the last minute, my husband, dear husband of mine, says, do you know you're talking about this instead of this? And it's like, oh, no, I didn't know that. So it's been quite a runaround today. Anyway, guys, I'm awfully glad to talk with you. Good morning. And we're talking about today, not what I announced, which was the last of the part of control, but we're talking about self-absorbed parenting, and if you were the child of a self-absorbed parent and what happens to you in those situations. It's really interesting what seeds get planted in us when we're young, what programming that we come to rely on that's not in our best interest as we age. So we're talking about that today. All right, let's, y'all are already clicking in. I'm so glad. Hello, sweeties. We are going to have I think it's an important show today. This is an important subject. And let's do a prayer to get us all on the same page, shall we? Nice big breath. Hello, darling. Watching from Quad City. Well, how nice. Well, I'm delighted that you found us. How nice to see all your pretty flowers and hearts, too, in the flag. Thank you. Okay. Dear God, thank you so much for all of us being together now, for our open hearts and open minds, for the words that are yours to be put in our mouth and your love in our heart, your wisdom in our being as we go forward. We thank you so much now as we open ourselves to hear, see, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. And we thank you so much for opening our lives so that we may, for these 90 minutes, see realistically and what happened to us and certainly how to fix it. We thank you so much, dear God, and so it is. Amen. Okay, guys, I found a really good article. Actually, I found this really good article twice because I lost the first one. And the name of it is 10 Signs That You May Have Been Raised by a Self-Absorbed Parent. Now, this is posted by Deborah, and her last name is Deborah Kerslake, Kerslake, I was very impressed with this article, actually. It's nice and simple and easy to understand. And she starts out with 10 behaviors that you may be exhibiting now. And she says 5 or more of these, you can probably bet you were raised by a self-absorbed parent. Self-absorption doesn't have to be full-out narcissism. A lot is said about narcissism these days, and there's a lot in the media. But you can have narcissistic tendencies without being diagnosable a narcissist. There is also something that isn't just about narcissists, but it is about several personality disorders. When it is truly extreme, they call these people high conflict individuals. I believe I've done some early radio shows on that. If you want me to do another one, just let me know. But there are people that are high conflict individuals. And that will be someone that demonstrates extreme versions of narcissism. So I think most people probably have parents that are either narcissists or, and could be high conflict, but or have narcissistic tendencies. You remember everybody like that doesn't look rich and famous. There are people walking among us all the time that are narcissists. There are people that are really struggling to make a living. There may be people that have never found themselves. Those two are people that too could have narcissism. Narcissism is just there to give you a sense of self when you don't have one. All right. We can talk about narcissists as we go through this, but I'm much more interested in just the generality of self-absorbed behavior because it really does damage people tremendously. Now, we're going to also talk about what to do about this, okay? I think that's a real important thing. It's not that you had all of this. I mean, I'm very sorry you had all this. We all sorry when we have unhappy childhoods. No child should have to suffer through that. However, that's not as important as what you do right now. You understand that. And that's the whole point of consciousness. It's like, okay, well, that happened. I happen to believe if it happened, it's supposed to happen. You're supposed to get something out of it, you know. You may not believe that, but I certainly do. I remind myself of that every time I get sick or anything is wrong with me. It's like, well, this is supposed to happen. What can I get out of this? What can I learn from? What can I take forward with me that makes me a better and deeper and more kind of caring and loving person, you know? Okay. So let's go through her list here. And I will say you might want to write some of these things down and see how many of these you actually have, okay? Because this is about the child of a self-absorbed parent. And I know as a therapist, I want to tell you, I see it over and over and over and over again, these characteristics. So here we go. Number 1, you don't feel like a valuable person. You don't feel like a valuable person. We're going to talk about these in detail. Number 2, you feel anxious a lot of the time. Number 3, you are never very confident about the decisions you make. You tend to ask other people what the best thing to do is. Number 4, you wonder if you're being too sensitive. And you may have been called that, by the way. Number 5, you sometimes feel like everything you do is wrong. Number 6, you always assume it's your fault when things go wrong. Number 7, you apologized often, even if it's not your fault. Number 8, you have a sense of dread or that something's wrong, but aren't able to identify what it is, so you feel on the edge most of the time. It's kind of the waiting for the other shoe to drop syndrome. Yeah. Number 9, you make excuses for your parents' behavior. We're going to talk about this, but I'm going to put on the table right now, in my opinion, that's the most damaging thing on this list. Because it blocks you from healing. You understand? You make excuses for your parents' behavior. I had a client last week, I believe it was last week. And she came in and actually she was on the phone. It was a remote. And she said, oh, but my poor mom only had an 8th grade education. And oh, my poor mom. Her mom was incredibly damaging. And all that tells a therapist when you say, oh, and you start making excuses for these people, is that you don't want to release your issues. So then we have to double back and do that work, you see, before we do anything else. We have to face the reality. So if you've never faced the reality about your self-absorbed parent, you're going to find this very challenging because you're going to try to make excuses for them. Here's the thing. Look, I feel bad for my client's mom, and she's long since off this earth. My client is still struggling with some of the issues. What I want to put on the table is now is not the time to feel sorry for her. Now's the time to feel sorry for and then work on the child. that was stunted, that is emotionally mature because she's still wrapped around that parent and the teachings of that parent. There's a time for everything. And when you're first trying to get at your stuff, that's not the time to be sympathetic to somebody who rightfully or wrongfully, and I don't, those aren't the right words, I should say consciously or subconsciously abused you through neglect, through omission instead of commission, but now's not the time. Later on, and oftentimes as a therapist, I will push you, I will start disparaging a parent so that you will actually see the parent realistically. And then later on, we reach a point when you have owned the child's experience that we start then saying, now let's put this in perspective. But if you can't get to that upset, if you can't get to this fact that you had low self-esteem and you can't find that sense of self, we got to go do that before we ever forgive anybody. Don't you understand? Some things come too early, and they're excuses. Forgiveness is a beautiful thing, isn't it? I think it's one of the most beautiful things there is, true forgiveness. But people don't like feeling the conflict inside when they don't forgive. So it's really easy for us to say, oh, I forgive, when we don't. Darling, that doesn't serve anybody. That just has something festering inside of you you've never talked about and you don't want to get to, that's all. You criticize yourself for not forgiving. You're harsh to yourself for not forgiving. And the bottom line is stop. Because it's perfectly natural. If this happened to you, it's perfectly natural for you not to forgive until you do. Until you do. Let's be advocates for the child you are first. You see? Okay. And number 10, last one on her list, is you try to make everything okay for everyone else. Often, and I will add this, at the expense of yourself. Okay. So, let's dive into this article. I think it's a good one. Deborah, what did I say her last name was? Kerslacki. Dr. Deborah Kerslacki. She wrote a good article here. So she's saying if 5 or more of these things ring true, you might want to face the fact that you had a self-absorbed parent. Okay? Some of these things, I do want to say, are just, what do I want to say here? They go with the script that was written for you. They just do. So if you want to write a different end to this script, we're going to have to change these ideas that you have about yourself. You see? And that's why we do a radio show like this, dears. Okay. Hi, guys. I see you clicking in over there. I'm so glad that you're with us today. All right. Being raised by a self-absorbed parent, guys, has a profound impact on how we see ourselves, how we see our God, how we see our friends, how our lives turn out, what businesses we choose, and whether we ultimately trust ourselves or not. Man, it's a critical thing. If we were reared by a self-absorbed parent, often your sense of self is not developed. A self-absorbed parent, really, we can use words like narcissism or tendencies toward narcissism, but the bottom line is that's an emotionally immature person. That's a person that isn't equipped to rear a child. Okay? Children are, of course, completely dependent on their parents, aren't they? Or other caregivers. And this goes on, certainly, in the first, in my opinion, 7 or 8 years of life. You're pretty much cooked by like a fine Christmas goose by then. All your issues are in place. Your devices, while unsophisticated to survive, are there, ready to be more sophisticated as the years pass. Because we get smarter, we learn to hide things, we learn to cope in better ways. And oftentimes the coping we choose helps us look good, you see. Hang on a minute. Michael, darling, would you please keep him quiet?
Be quiet, dog. Dog, be quiet.
Don't you love that? We have a normal home, guys.
Dog.
Okay. You might want to just pick him up. He'll be quiet if you pick him up. Okay. In our childhood development, you see, by the time we're 7 or 8, as I said, we have pretty much everything in place. Not sophisticated, but it's in place. And by the time we reach, I want to say 12 to 14 years old, because we have seen through glasses that are about what we experienced in our childhood now. For example, that you don't matter to people, like you didn't matter to a self-absorbed parent. You start seeking those people out, people that you don't matter to, or people that are incapable of seeing that you matter. Does it mean that you don't matter? Absolutely not. It means more about them, of course, than it does about you. So we start looking for things that submit, by 12 or 14, submit the things that we saw when we were younger and were putting in place then. Okay. This is why, as adults, we still have some things to get through, you see. And certainly, if any of these characteristics met you, I do want to challenge them today because, guys, these things are just lies. They're lies, and here's how they're lies. Because of your parents' behavior, if they were self-absorbed, you surmised, based on appearances, that these things were true, that you couldn't trust yourself, that nobody wanted to hear from you, that you're not a valuable person, that you need to people please because your very presence in the world is not enough. You see? Good. Okay. All right. Children must be seen and validated and understood. They must be found interesting and accepted. And if they don't, they carry a poor sense of self-worth through the rest of their lives. Not only that, because they feel they are worthless, they think everybody deems them that way, judges them that way. They are not worthy of love and time and abundance and energy and luck and all the wonderful things that we have in our world to enjoy. A child parented by a self-absorbed adult also has the inability to say no when they need to. And this may have been seen by the self-absorbed parent as selfish, right? And let me get to this next page, dear hearts. They may have been called selfish growing up. I have a client that I adore who is coming out of all this now, but her mother called her selfish a lot. I guess who the selfish one was. And it was an extremely interesting thing to work with her through the years because she didn't want to appear selfish. She was, because everybody is, guys. Why are we running away from that word? You know, that is the presentment in the ego child's mind of a certain characteristic of human beings. And when you cross over into the higher self mind, that becomes you do the right thing for yourself and others. Whatever it is, you deem it the right thing to do. And you're at peace in your heart about it. Okay. So what happened to this client is she held herself back from anything that appeared selfish. And of course, she was a people pleaser to the extreme. People pleaser to the extreme. She said yes to everything and everyone. And all of this led to feelings of being absolutely exhausted. And, by the way, what was she making herself? The victim, you see. There is a syndrome that we use in my work called the victim, martyr, savior syndrome. And everybody doesn't like to think of themselves as a victim, right? So we may be the savior, but it's the same energy as being the victim. Don't you understand that? This victim, martyr, savior syndrome is the same energy. You just toggle back and forth between those roles that you are playing instead of being who you really are, your essential self, the person that we want to see in full authenticity. You see? Okay. Right. Doing this is really all thanks to a self-absorbed parent or parents' inability to show empathy and to be focused on their child. You see, it's hard parenting. I've never been a parent except to my darling grown children now, but I am going to tell you that because I haven't been, I stand back and coach a lot of parents who are having trouble because there's a fine line that everybody walks as a parent. When to be involved, when to back off so the child has something of their own, you see? When to coach someone through something, when to back off and let them figure it out for themselves. But one thing that always should be present in good parenting is empathy. Feeling what somebody else feels, having the ability to feel that for your child, because what self-absorbed parents do instead, again, the same energy, is they make them extensions of themselves. A parent has this talent. What's wrong with a kid? That they don't have that talent. They may browbeat them into being like them in some way. Self-absorbed parents are usually focused only on their own needs. And they don't see the child's needs and wants at all. This leads to feelings in the child of being invalidated, doesn't it? They're not worth being listened to, or being understood, or being given time, or shown any respect. It's interesting because I was talking to a client the other day about it who grew up with this, okay? And she has, for a long time, she'd like very much to meet a partner, which I believe she will, and fairly soon. But what happens is that she says, I want to find a partner that understands me. Oh, isn't this interesting? Because when she was growing up, her mother was the villain and her father was at least not the villain. Okay? She gravitated toward him because he was a safer parent. He didn't criticize her. He didn't rage at her. He didn't spank her. And that was all her mother's doing. And so what happened is he was a weak, very ineffectual man. And guess what she draws in constantly? Now, did this man, as the father, ever understand her? No. First of all, it's a fallacy in our minds to think that anybody's ever going to understand us fully, because that's not going to happen. We're all going to try as loving partners, right, to understand the other person's point of view. But let me tell you, and empathy helps to have that that talent. However, let me tell you, nobody's going to fully understand you. So get that fantasy out of your head. It's just not going to happen. You are destined to understand you if you're in the consciousness journey, because that's what it's all about. Not running around trying to find somebody else to do it for you. You understand? So she's getting exactly what she is unconsciously drawing in over and over again. A father who does not understand her because he's too ineffectual to understand her. He couldn't even protect her from her mother. Is that who she's going to really want as a conscious human being? Absolutely not. So none of the relationships work out, you see? You get it. Okay. We have got to grow past. You see, what we are growing into, ladies and gentlemen, once we make our peace with our parents, what we're growing into is being the mature parent, mother, and father to ourselves. Now, that's the mature person. Do we all need things from our partners from time to time? You betcha. There are times that we feel low and we go to our partners and we say, would you mind telling me this because I just feel crappy right now? And in their love for us, they put their arms around us and say exactly what we need them to say and mean it. And isn't that wonderful? That's something that is marvelous for human beings to do. If you do that too much, or if you need it all the time because you're not providing it for yourself, that's an imbalance, ladies and gentlemen, and it was caused by these parents. That's an imbalance. We all have to grow up and parent ourselves in a mature and loving way, not in a harsh way, because I saw that this week too. There's a woman I know who I absolutely adore, and she has, thank God, been in remission for cancer for a while, but she's had it. And we really need to work on it, and we are working on trying to get anything emotional that could have contributed to that out of the way, right? Okay. And I said to her, when I heard some of her stories, I said, man, you are really the original mean girl to yourself. You just make such harsh decisions. For example, she has a huge party. Here she is trying to recover from cancer, right? And she has a huge party, and she doesn't let everybody bring their own food. She was going to do it herself. I said, call everybody and tell them it's a potluck. The kind of pressure that we subconsciously put on ourselves, guys. The things that we say to ourselves that are harsh and mean in the privacy of our own minds and hearts when we're alone. You better challenge those things. Now, here's the thing. My darling husband, when he heard me lecture in the early days of our getting together, he heard me say that out of chaos comes order. That's the way new universes are created. That's the way we are when we bring a new baby into our house, when we bring a puppy into our house, when we have a new job, when we lose our job, okay? It's one of the universal laws is chaos to order. And he said to me after the lecture, he said, you know, Martha, from now on, when you lecture on that, you ought to tell people that takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy in physics, and it takes a lot of energy in psychology. So, guys, this is about confronting yourself to change. This is about confronting yourself and hearing those things you're saying in your head. Smart people, and there are no dumb bunnies in my group, smart people, the science has found, think 1,000 thoughts an hour. Guys, that is an accumulated mass of things that either puts you in a very negative territory or a positive one. Which is it going to be? Because your life is going to be created because of what you think. What camp are you in? And I think that's really important for you to realize. What camp are you in? And be realistic and honest about that. Because you're going to need to change the negative camp. And the interesting thing to me She's going to need to change the positive too, because there's more depth of positivity and more depth of love in you than anybody's living right now, than I'm living right now. How far can we go? What's your potential? You see? It's pretty exciting stuff. We are playing in the fields of your potential. That's what we're talking about doing. But you got to take the right steps. You see, you've heard me say almost every show that we go from awareness to consciousness to enlightenment. These are stages. They're the grand stages. They are generalized stages. But let me tell you, they are. And we're talking about right now, you being aware of what you're saying to yourself. You correcting that. You're asking yourself and challenging yourself, is that really true or is that a lie? And it's interesting because several years ago, I did a class on lies, on the lies we tell ourselves. And I have an advanced class that's been with me for 20-something years, right? And I said, okay, so what's the truth? And they couldn't tell me what the truth was. Even when they could recognize the lie, they couldn't tell me what the truth was. You see, our tendency as unaware human beings is to say, well, here's a lie, I don't matter, and here's a truth, I matter. Is that the truth? No, that's not the truth. That's a 180-degree reaction. And reactions don't cut it. The truth cuts it. So let's say I don't matter is the lie I've been living under. Well, what's the truth? Well, let's just make it up as we go right now. Here's the truth. I don't know I matter yet, but it feels right to me. And I'm happier when I believe I matter. And now I'm on the path for seeing all the ways I tear that down and don't matter to myself, so I can matter to myself and choose a different life as I believe that more and more. Now, there is the truth. You hear the difference? One's real, and the other is just another form of fantasy. I don't matter is the same thing as I matter. Okay? And you'll hear me say this on some shows. I absolutely abhor the line that people say in therapy sometime. I don't abhor the person, of course, but the line is, I have to say my truth. Oh, for God's sake. All that is another version of I matter in the 180-degree fantasy. Don't do that. Just say what's true, guys. Just say what's true and emotionally honest and authentic for yourself. If you do that, you'll be able to find your truths. Okay? And it has nothing to do with, I've got to say my truth. That's ridiculous. All right? All that means is you've never stood up for yourself, and you're still not, except in rage. And that's the same thing as not having any rage and just being a doormat. Guys, it's the same energy. It's just different uses of the same energy. You get it? We got to be smart in this. Guys, consciousness is an esoteric journey because of this. Because you can have the same behavior on the top and vastly different motivations underneath. And you got to be honest with those motivations, because here's what's happening in your emotional body. You got everything. You believe you matter and you believe you don't matter. Both of them are there. That's human. Both of them are there. But consciousness is when you challenge the ones that are not supporting your highest self mind. And you have two minds. Anybody who's new, here we go. You've got the ego child's mind, the part of you that thinks like a child. It's fear-based, and it believes in lack. It sees everything as lack. Okay? You want a partner, it sees you don't have one. You want more money, it sees you don't have any. All right? And here's the way you communicate with the universe. You know this, don't you? That whatever you give a lot of energy to, wherever your thoughts go in preponderance, that's what you get. That's what the universe thinks you want, because you're emphasizing energetically what you want. That's how to communicate with it. So what if that mind changes now? What if you are thinking positively and believe that everything works for your good and that everything's supporting you? And if it doesn't feel good, it's not the end. What if you believe that? What if you believe and trust that you are in union because you are the aspect of God you are, and that you are in union with that? What if you cooperate with that higher self that's trying to take you to your good? What of that? I had an experience this week. As a matter of fact, this is what my husband and I were laughing about this morning, that people are, in general, trying to control everything. Their computers breaking, their friendships, their son and daughter, whatever. They're trying to control, or they're in cooperation with their highest self and realize it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. And just watch the magic and be willing to cooperate. Be willing to cooperate, ladies and gentlemen. I think cooperation, honestly, this is me, is one of the most spiritual words there is. Cooperation. I think, here's something that's rather mind-blowing. I think everything in this universe cooperates, but man's ego child's mind. I don't mean that in a sexist way. I'm talking about mankind's ego child's mind. I think that the gazelle that's being eaten by the lion right now is cooperating in some way. By its weakness, it's cooperating. Everything is cooperating. But man is designed for consciousness to grow. That's what we're designed for. We learn sometimes that we're not worthy of growth, don't we? Or we're not worthy to do that, or that takes too much energy if we have to do something for ourselves. We learn all sorts of misguided information. The fact is, we are making our way back. When we are conscious, we're making our way back to cooperation with higher energies. If you want to call it God, call it God. I happen to. But if you are uncomfortable with that word, call it whatever you want to call it, because everything is this energy, you see? Everything is this energy. It's just energy. And it's here to support you if you will allow it. If you will not be unconscious to it. If you will open to it. Now, there are a lot of spiritual disciplines like this. I think of the Church of the Science of Mind. That is not Scientology, okay? Science of Mind was founded on things, writings of Ernest Holmes, and I think, who was the other one? The essayist. All of a sudden, I've completely gone blank, and I just had it in my mind. But anyway, and the Bible was in there as well. However, Ralph Waldo Emerson, essayist, that's it. However, while they say, the premise of that organization is change your mind, change your life, and it's wonderful, and it's true, nobody tells you how to change your mind. And people struggle with that. And they hear these lessons. You're hearing this lesson now and going, yeah, look at that. I can have anything I want. I've got to get my mind. But you know what? It's hard because of the stuff we're talking about right now. Because a part of you may have been neglected. And you don't know how to do this. You've got all sorts of things interfering with the energy of just going to get it. Oh, could I be wrong? Oh, who doesn't like me? Oh, I don't matter enough to do that. And when you start waking up, You're either doing this cleanly and well and easily and effortlessly, or you are reacting still to everything. I don't want you to be a reactor. A reactor is someone who isn't in charge of their life from the inside. I want you to listen and respond to life, but not react to it. I want you to choose very clearly and not react to it, because that's not your choice when you do that. It's not. It's a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? Well, I'm off the subject. Let's go back, shall we? I'm not too off the subject, but I did go down the bunny trail. I sometimes do. There are a lot of reasons, she goes on to say, why a parent puts their needs ahead of their child. It could be that they're depressed and unable to focus on anything but getting through the day. It could be that they have their priorities mixed up. It could be that they have been traumatized in their life, that they feel overwhelmed and under-resourced. Again, needing to focus on the functioning practicalities of the day rather than spending time or giving attention to the child. Okay? The parent could have a drug or drink dependence, say, and be totally focused on satisfying that need. It could be that they were reared this way themselves and see no other way of parenting. Or it could be that they have narcissistic tendencies like we've talked about. And if they do, they lack empathy for others, including their own children. There are a lot of reasons that people do the things they do. But darlings, if you are the child of these parents, I'm not trying to get you to do anything but look at them realistically and say, okay, I see it, and don't defend them right now. Now is not the time. Let's get you healed from this. How do we heal? Well, we do some of the things that I suggest in every show. We challenge our thinking. We realize the truth and not the lie. We try to live according to that truth and not the lie. For example, are you busy placating other people and doing exactly what they say? Do you ever say, thank you so much for suggesting that. I'm probably not going to do that right now, but I certainly appreciate you caring about me and telling me what you think. Thank you. But no. Okay. And you understand that selling no to somebody else, when you are in this energy, the energy of lack and not knowing you matter, it's almost impossible, isn't it? So I come along, and as a therapist, as a coach, I'm going to tell you what to say until you can believe it yourself. Do you understand? There is a higher form of you in you right now. But a lot of times, these old ideas of ourselves block those higher forms, and that's the higher self energy, and that's the energy of your potential, you see. Children of self-absorbed parents, back to the script that she wrote, the article she wrote, often become people pleasers. Being liked and accepted makes them feel safe. It makes them feel worthwhile, okay? Even if it's not sincere. I mean, I've known people in my life, you know that too, where they just overdo. Oh, they just overdo. Somebody's kind to them, they're going to go out and spend a lot of money and do something that is rather inappropriate to do. It's over the top. It scares people off. Okay. They want so to be liked, so to be accepted, so to be appreciated, so to be understood. There's that word again. Instead of just real. These are people that have never learned they're okay and that they can be loved without doing anything, huh? Do you understand? We can all be loved without doing anything. Of course, our highest selves are the ones that want to contribute. That's the irony. So if we contribute in the ego child's mind, the person we're contributing to often feels used, often feels manipulated, and often feels pulled on because it's not sincere. We want them to love us instead of realizing we are love and giving it away and getting it back in a normal, healthy loop. There is a normal, healthy loop out there for us. We're supposed to find out not how to be loved, but that we are love itself. And we're supposed to give it, but not at the expense of self, and receive it, and keep that loop going. It's as easy as that energetically. But it's hard emotionally to do because we've learned other things. You see? All right. She goes on to say that being a people pleaser doesn't gain someone any respect. It doesn't. And doesn't reinforce their sense of self. People pleasers are doing this because they have no sense of self. People pleasers are doing it for the immediate fix they get. But it's shallow. I have dear friends and a client that has worked through this beautifully. And she kept saying to me at one point, when she finally realized it, I'm so shallow. And I said, yeah, you know. Of course, you know, my next thing is, why isn't that all right now? That's where you are. And when she realized that, she really did get through this. I'm really proud of her. But guys, this is one of the things that keeps us shallow. It's attachment to other people, not real connection. And guys, the thing that makes this world go round is real and genuine connection. Connection with people. And support of our human beings, our fellow human beings, and allowing them to support us. It's a beautiful thing. Now, she goes on to say, because she focuses this article from this point on narcissism, she says a narcissist is a person who has an excessive interest in or admiration of themselves. Narcissists think the world revolves around them, or wants it to, and they have little interest in other people, including their own children. Again, children often can be extensions of narcissists, not real children in and of their own right. And I remember being with a dear friend years ago. He's a big movie star, okay? That's what he became, but I coached him when he was younger. And I remember him saying to me, and I wrote his exact quote down, I'm just not interested in anyone that's not me. That's what he said. I noted that at the time as sad. I hope he's grown out of that. Okay. You keep in mind that people with narcissistic tendencies, narcissists themselves, are often very, very charming. They're the life of the party. Sometimes that's a wonderful thing. You see, it's about why people are like they are, what's motivating them. And if you will just turn on that spidey sense in you, you will actually be able to see what's motivating people. People that are motivated by ego, in the ego child's mind, it's often not very comfortable. It's often that you will pick up that they are angry underneath, even though they're covering up with charm, or they're expecting rejection. The bottom line is that they're not authentic, that they haven't taken a chance on being loved. You see, a child that has self-absorbed parents doesn't take a chance on being loved. They're there, they should be loved. It's as simple as that, right? They're there, they're a kid, they should be loved. I think so many times parents just spit those kids out and don't realize what a keen responsibility they have to their kids. It's never occurred to them what their responsibility might be. I often coach parents in this. When something happens to the child could misinterpret it. Does the parent sit down and tell the child, suggest to the child how they think about it? And when I say that to a woman that has 3 children, she goes, oh my God, what kind of time do you think I have? Well, maybe you should have thought about it before you had 3 children. We don't think what good parenting is. And here I am lecturing on this, and I want to tell you that your parents didn't think about it oftentimes, and neither do parents now. Hopefully, society is waking up. Many times, certainly look at your parents' relationships with other people. Were they genuine? Were they deep? Were they pure? Or were they a relationship of attachment, not connection, convenience, manipulation? That ought to tell you something about the kind of people they were. People that have narcissistic tendencies or are narcissists are too busy talking about themselves to listen to others. I use the image a lot of times when I'm talking to people about this, that when this person, this narcissist or the person with narcissistic tendencies walks in the room, it's like all the air sucks out. It's not for anybody else. I remember having lunch with a group of girlfriends, and we were having a marvelous time. This was years ago. We were having a marvelous time catching up. I mean, how many times do we do that these days, right? Girlfriend lunches. And this woman that I didn't know real well, but was a friend of one of the other women, came in, and the whole rest of the time, there was not one mention of anybody but her. Not one. It was just a marvelous thing to watch, honestly. It was like, watching a train wreck happen right in front of me. It was just almost hard to look away from. They won't stop talking about themselves, this article says. And second, they won't engage in conversation about the other party at all without bringing it right back to them. I've noticed for years it's fascinating to hear people tell a story. I want you to keep this in mind. This is really interesting. It gives you a lot of insight. Watch people tell a story. Is it about the story? Is it about the person in the story or persons? Or is it about them? Real interesting to see. Because a narcissist or person with a lot of narcissistic tendencies always brings it back to them. Now, this is on a consistent basis. I mean, I understand. I mean, I think it's marvelous when you say to someone, I can't possibly know how you feel, but I know some part of that. And that's not what I'm talking about. Empathy is not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about over a consistent period of time. Watch what people talk about. Okay? Think back on your parenting to see what they talked about. I have often seen this in my clients' parents as the client tells me stories about their years. And she mentions something that I commonly see, so I'm going to put it on the table. Parents like this, they're self-involved, might lash out when you want to hang out with your friends as a young person. They might claim you don't spend enough time with them or make you feel guilty for spending time with your friends or doing activities they're not interested in joining in. They may criticize your hobbies. They may berate you for the friends you have. They may put them down to pull you back to them. This often happens when you meet a partner. The self-absorbed parent may make unkind remarks about the chosen partner. And as by this time, this article says, and I think she's right, you're used to doing what the parent says. The self-absorbed parent has brainwashed you. Okay? So it may well make you rethink or question your choice. And by this stage in your life, you may not trust your own judgment. You see how this works out now. A person with narcissistic tendencies will use other people. People who are typically highly empathetic as well, because this person is going to supply their sense of self-worth and make them feel powerful and loved. But because of their low self-esteem, their egos can be slighted very easily, which increases their need for compliments. Although they may seem super confident, they are not. You know, we're talking about narcissistic tendencies and not just narcissism, but there are three kinds of narcissism. Let's put those on the table, because who knows the kind of parent you really did have. There is the exhibitionist narcissist. This is the P.T. Barnum narcissist, the one that does not have a soft underbelly. They have really created this concrete facade, and they are superior. The second type is the closet narcissist. And this is the kind of narcissist that you can get to, that can be undermined and crushed, okay? But they exhibit all the characteristics of narcissism, which is a lack of sympathy, a lack of empathy, that kind of thing. Make it all about them, like the attention. Whoops. Oh, excuse me. I have a little puppy here that needs to get up on his mama. This is Tuffle. Isn't he sweet? He's a good boy, and he takes care of his mama and barks at squirrels, which you heard earlier. The third type of narcissist, and by the way, the closet narcissist goes out of their way to not appear to be a narcissist, but they're motivated by narcissism, you see, and by those tendencies. The third kind is called the toxic narcissist or manipulative narcissist. They're all manipulative, by the way. So I like toxic better than that. There are many people that are toxic narcissists that demand loyalty when they don't deserve it. They're CEOs of companies and a lot more, are politicians. Not all of them, of course. But toxic narcissists often go with, by the way, serial killers if they have some of these other dark traits connected to it. Okay. The main difference between people who are confident and those who are not is that they will need others. People who are not need others to lift them up. And they often lift others up by lift themselves up by putting others down. Two things that people with a lot of confidence and a genuine confidence, a real balance in this, don't do. Sarcasm is like that. I don't like sarcasm as a form of humor. It's different from satire. Sarcasm is when only one person is laughing. Only one person says a cutting remark that puts the other person down. There's no sarcasm that doesn't put somebody else down. And it is the humor often of these people. It's not nice. It's not kind. And you all ought to look at that. There are cultures that are very sarcastic. Why? I say. Might want to look at that. We are not defined by our culture, guys. It's just part of us. And we can either indulge in it or we can go past it. Let's be children of the world, not children of our small sphere. She goes on to say that sometimes you experience a form of manipulation called gaslighting, and it is used for emotional control. It's a hallmark of narcissism or narcissistic tendencies, gaslighting. Narcissists may say blatant lies, falsely accuse others, spin the truth, and ultimately try to distort your reality, making you so confused, doubting your own mind that you back down, and in so making sure that you remain under their control. Unfortunately, a lot of parenting has been that. I call it brainwashing. It's ridiculous, you know. But people with narcissistic tendencies and narcissists do this to cause people to doubt themselves as a way to gain superiority. Do you understand? Look, we all do things differently. When you're in a balanced state, you're open to doing things in a better way. But let me tell you, if you're doing it in a good way for you, nobody should tell you otherwise. Do you get it? I'm thinking, when I say that, of this woman that I talked about earlier, whose mother was so incredibly critical of her, called her selfish when she wanted to do it her own way. How do you learn if a kid doesn't do it her own way or his own way, huh? How do you become responsible for yourself? You teach the child, if you are a self-absorbed parent, you're teaching the child by not letting them do this to not be responsible. It's subtle, I know. This is the esoterica of psychology, of consciousness. Of course it's subtle. Of course we've all made mistakes as parents. Who hasn't? Of course, hey, it's up to the adult child now to heal from that and go on and find a life. That served you, didn't it? To make you who you are right now. But who you are right now doesn't mean you're not becoming something else. And becoming is what evolvement is all about. It's what consciousness is all about. Deepening consciousness. That's what it's about. Change, growth, evolvement. Thinking different thoughts, having different feelings, doing different things, thinking different spiritual thoughts, energetic thoughts. Knowing something else now. Good for you. Narcissists do thrive, and these are narcissistic people with narcissistic tendencies too. They thrive off being worshipped. So they use manipulation tactics to get people to do just that, often seeming the life of the party and great fun, and they draw people in, but it doesn't last for long because this person can't relax in the company of a narcissist because one is never sure of what they're going to do. Years ago, I read a marvelous book. Now, what was this about? Was it Bruno Bettelheim? For some reason, I think so, in The Uses of Enchantment. I may have gotten it wrong. But Bruno Bettelheim said that, if I've got the right psychologist, that unpredictability in the home was worse than having it all bad or all good. But it served a very good purpose. And I believe this with all my heart. If you came from an unpredictable home, and who didn't to more or less degrees, it made you creative. All these ways that you yourself manipulate and learn how to do all this stuff on a low level of your ego child's mind, let me tell you, is creativity. And what happens when you use it instead of the old way you have always used it as a child? What happens when you use it for something more? What happens when you use it in your potential? Well, it becomes great and deep creativity. And wow, is that wonderful? Does that add to the collective? You betcha. Okay. Behaviors, when you experience these as a child from the with a self-involved parent, often lead to a child feeling empty. Why empty? Well, I'm going to tell you. Let me just stop with that word, because I think that's a good word that we better explain. A kid that comes from a household that has all this dysfunction is so busy navigating the dysfunction that they often turn off their higher self mind completely, because they've just got to survive, and they're doing it all with the ego child's mind. So they turn off the loving God that's there for them. I'm not talking about religion, guys. Religion is man-made. It is a dogma. You subscribe to a religion if you are going to be part of a religion. But there is something beyond religion for all of us. I'm not disparaging religion. Don't think I am. It serves, I'm all for everybody, everything that serves everybody, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. Okay? But there's something beyond that, and that's your spirituality, who you are as the child of God. You are as the aspect of God. You are. And when that is cut off, when you're doing other things almost exclusively, rather than opening that up and knowing about that and about you as that in the world, why wouldn't you be empty? Because that's the one thing that fills us up, is knowing that God's right here with us. Call it what you will. This energy is right here. There's something beyond. And many people who are actively abused in their childhood home say, I knew there was something more. I just didn't know what it was. But I knew there was something else. And if that's you, good for you. That's the call. And why you're listening to a show like this. Behaviors, like having a self-involved parent, the behaviors of the parent, also may lead to an insecurity in the child and loving relationships. I mean, after all, nobody ever supported you. Nobody was ever there for you, were they? You are on your own. It leads to the development of imagined fears, too, because a parent's supposed to protect you. A parent was supposed to provide a sense of safety, right? And they weren't there for you. So the kid, this is a perfect example of a child not having a parent sit down and say, let's talk about your fear. Let's talk about whether this is real or not. Let's talk about why you feel this way. If you allow that child to develop this, well, it's a runaway train. There's a generalized anxiety defense for you. They surmise what life is like. Are you going to let your loving child surmise what life is like when it is erroneous? You know, you good parents going to see that, move in, talk to them about it. But nobody has that parent, or very few people do. Another characteristic is children of parents like this mistrust others and themselves. Because they mistrust themselves, they mistrust others. Because they now generalize other people to be their parents. Those parents weren't trustworthy, everybody's untrustworthy. That's a generalization. Is it true? No, it's not true. What is true is you don't know how to negotiate with people. You don't know how to read people well. You don't see them as who they are and know what their motivations are. You don't trust the signs. You don't know. Then when you do find a trustworthy somebody, you don't know how to negotiate with them because you've never learned that. You've learned to run away and avoid this person or to give them everything they want and that you're a victim. Those are the things you learned instead. I suggest now that you challenge that and learn something else. A lot of times, children like this experience identity conflict. Who are you? Who are you? Of course. And sometimes our self-identity is tied up with a word like being a victim. Boy, I'm telling you, you got to de-link those words. Whatever your self-identity, whatever the kind of family you came from, look at that for your self-identity because that's not healthy. Your identity is who you are as an aspect of the living God in you. That's your real identity. That's your real authenticity. That's who you ought to get to know beyond all this. But you've got to see what you're doing first. The truth lies under you seeing what you're doing and going, I don't want to do that anymore. Here's the thing. The reason these issues don't drop off of you is because you don't want to look. You don't want to see you're doing this. Why? Because you're self-attacking. You learned to do that too in your childhood. You self-attack. That you are unforgiving. Oh, means I'm a terrible person. God is, I'm excluded from that kingdom because I don't forgive. So we hide it and we, keep that as our little secret. We never heal from these things if we don't get them up on the, and out in the open and on the table. We need to do that. We need to say, this is exactly how I feel. And I'm working on it to not feel that way anymore. Now we're getting somewhere if you're sincere about working on it. A lot of times people say, I'm working on it because they don't want to fool with it, right? Do you see? That's not going to work. And in this marvelous, marvelous, energetic place of healing, you've just denied it. And it can't happen for somebody like that until they wake up. And that's awareness that leads to enlightenment, that leads to consciousness, that leads to enlightenment. Now you're on that path. Okay. People with parents like this often feel they have no personality of their own, no likes, dislikes, their own opinions about things. Again, so much of it are reactions. You may say, I'm very opinionated. But it's a reaction, not a reality. You understand? Real different. And we can't get to your authenticity until you know who you are in reality. Without drama, without overreactions to things. Just because it is. And of course, we already hit this, but I think it's important to say again that children of parents like this often feel they are unimportant and not valuable. Well, let me tell you, that's the biggest lie here, that you're unimportant and not valuable. That's an out-and-out lie. If you're here, if you exist, you're valuable. Now, let's find out what you can contribute. And that has to do with deeper levels of consciousness. You see? You are not valuable because you contribute. That's why people think I'm nothing but my work, you see. That's bull. You're valuable, and when you know who you are in a deeper level of your own energy and spirituality, you contribute. They're completely different things, but that's how they work together. One is not the other. Dealing with someone who has narcissistic tendencies or is a narcissist can be really draining because they can always find a way to become the victim or put the blame on whatever situation or another person. You know, I often mention at this point when I'm lecturing on this, DARVO, DARVO. It's a tactic used by people like this and people with narcissistic tendencies or someone who is just in that narcissistic frame of mind. DARVO, it stands for, you ready? Okay, stands for deny, attack, reverse, victim and offender. So, in other words, what the narcissist or narcissistic tendency will do at this point is when they don't know how to handle a situation, they will attack the other person. Okay? They may have done something like run the car off the road, but it's your fault because you distracted them. Now, that just is silly. And it's so unnecessary. Let me tell you why it's unnecessary. Because everybody makes mistakes. Why isn't it all right? You're going to hear me say that a lot. And why isn't that all right? See, the answer is, it is. You're human. Be human. That is the most loving, dear thing you can do. And if you're looking for this remarkable person in your potential and you don't know where that is, look in your humanness. That's where this divinity is, only by the acceptance of who you are. And you make mistakes. Who doesn't, guys? We're so busy being smart. We're so busy being narcissists. We're all so busy being perfectionists. We're so busy trying to look good that we can't look real and be our dear, precious selves in that reality, in that authenticity. I'm telling you, there's nothing more beautiful than you say, okay, I'm sorry I made a mistake. Our hearts as people just fill with love for somebody like that. Who's that honest? A self-involved parent always complains about being misunderstood, by the way. Here's the word again. They also find a way to feel hurt, even when the issue at hand is clearly not about them. Isn't that interesting? You're going to make it, a narcissistic person makes it all about them. You may find yourself not telling the parent something you've done because you're protecting yourself against any criticism. And by the way, you may generalize that now that you're out of the parent's house. If you just withheld a lot of yourself, you're still withholding. Well, what does that bode for a marriage? What does that bode for a relationship that's supposed to be intimate and dear and precious, where you're all supposed to protect each other and support each other? You are withholding. And that doesn't work. You might protect yourself against criticism by withholding, by isolating or withdrawing. Because you know they're going to turn it into something about them. And you may feel, why bother talking to anybody about this? Why bother working anything about? Here's the predictable outcome, because you've generalized. You see? It may be that nothing you do, you believe, is ever good enough, because nothing ever seems good enough for this self-absorbed parent. You may have been raised to suppress or deny your own feelings because it's all about theirs. You see? She goes on to say, perhaps you need to work to change habits of a lifetime if you've learned all this as an adult, by the time you reach adulthood, if you're doing this. She goes on to say, narcissists are pretty good at finding fault in others. Oh, yeah. But struggle to see any issue in themselves. Hey, well, come on in, Shelley Sears. You betcha. Join this video, of course. I don't know what to do about that. Do I punch this and say, come on? Okay? Just join. You all keep in mind, too, sweetheart. Oh, my God, I've talked so much. I've got 9 minutes left. You keep in mind, everybody, that if you would like to call in, there is a guest call-in number, 347-850-1647. That's every show. And you can always tune into the live show without getting on the air through my website, which is marthanovak.com. Martha Novak, Novak.com. Okay? So I guess we're going to be talking about this next week, too. All right? Because I haven't begun to finish about all this. All right. Narcissists and people with narcissistic tendencies also are pretty terrible at receiving criticism. And they'll often become hugely upset when it's suggested that they're not perfect. Guys, the most dynamic life is one where you listen. You listen to critique and criticism, and you make your own decisions about it. Some of that will be wrong because they don't know what you're motivated by. But if there is any speck of truth in that, that's extremely important to look at because it helps you grow and change and shift and become something much deeper and more loving. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? Nobody likes criticism or critique, but narcissists and people with narcissistic tendencies are hypersensitive to it. It's because they really don't think they're much to begin with, right? And guys, babies, this shows. For anybody that's looking, that insecurity shows. Why are you doing it when it shows anyway? You see? Why not just be our loving selves, our loving, contributory selves? You will notice in self-absorbed people and in self-absorbed parents, they may cry, scream, yell, throw tantrums whenever they don't know how to work out a problem. Okay? They'll blame you instead of sitting down. And what it shows is an emotional immaturity because they really don't know how to work out the problem with you. Even if they think they're being criticized, and there is a programming of self-blame usually that goes with people like this, they'll have their tantrum. They'll have their fit. People that don't have a strong sense of self will tiptoe around them so they don't kick off or cause a fuss and make life miserable. And you may have done that as a child. I hear all the time the same phrase, I walked on eggshells in my parents' house. Well, don't do that anymore. There's no reason. Find out who you are. This isn't about confronting this person. This isn't about going after them and making them feel bad. This is about you changing and becoming a quiet, strong sense of who you are and living that way from now on. You know, if a person, and if someone in my life matters to me, I'm going to sit down with them when we're going to talk about it. If they don't matter to me, I'm probably going to ignore this behavior and just go on and not be with them. Because what do we have in common, you know? After all. Traditionally, she goes on to say, parents are supposed to be caring, loving, and empathetic people. So it truly can feel like you've been dealt a bad deal when your parents can't seem to care about anyone else's needs. You may struggle with this, and I understand that. they were supposed to be different. They weren't. What are you going to learn from it? What are you going to do with it now? Okay? And again, it's a mistake for you to go 180 degrees the other way and give your own children everything, because I'm going to tell you they'll hate you for it. It's a way to keep your child the rest of your life, and they're not going to like that when they reach a certain level. They'll take it from you, take anything you got to give, but they won't like it, and they're going to blame you for it. So we have to wake up to a certain balance. These people, again, parents like this, really are unable to put a child's needs first. And they may seem even uninterested in your life unless you do something that positively reflects on them or creates for them a nice scenario. You see, these people are narcissists, and people that have narcissistic tendencies aren't moved by something that doesn't affect them directly, Whenever you make big decisions, like moving to a new job or deciding to get married, is your parent able to handle it? That's a real good question. Do they want what's best for you? If you've gotten a great job and you're moving away, are they happy for you? Sad a little bit that they're not going to see you as often. But are they happy for you? See, a true friend, by the way, true parent that is kind and good, why wouldn't we all want what's best for you? Even if it does affect us, so you have to do something else now. That's emotional maturity. But a narcissistic person, a person with narcissistic tendencies, operates from self-protection. And if their ego is bruised, or they feel a decision was made that they couldn't control, and they can, and they're not in control, by the way, if they feel like they're not in control. And that's why we did work on control before I got to this thing. Okay. Listen to those shows, please, on Blog Talk Radio and Facebook Live. If they feel like they're not in control, they can become cruel, blaming, defensive, and project immense amount of guilt and shame onto the other person. This makes them very difficult to deal with. I know it does. Now, we're going to talk more about this next week. I'm going to stop right there and say that's where we end today, because we have 2 minutes. Guys, I also want to say to you, thank you so much for getting the word around about the show. You are really spreading the word on social media and on word of mouth, and that really helps me promote these shows tremendously. Hey, Michelle. Oh, I'm delighted. Thank you. I love everybody growing. That's just marvelous. There's no reason to carry around these old burdens anymore, guys. It is about change and growth and opportunity.
90 seconds.
And by the way, all of these things make you flexible in this very crazy world right now. That's one of the nicest things. Are you adaptable? Are you flexible? Are you going with? Again, cooperation is one of the most spiritual words ever. And you're either trying to control or you're trying to cooperate. Now, if you have parents like this, guys, you have some of these tendencies yourself because you just can't escape it. You're either going to have the tendencies to do exactly what they did, or you're going to have the opposite. And the opposite isn't good either, because it's not real. It's giving everything away. So stop. All right? Thank you so much, as I said, for getting the word around. And we now say, dear God, lift these people out of this. Let them see clearly what they're doing. And let them embrace change and growth and love and evolvement and the new and the becoming. We thank you so much, and say this prayer in your name. In the name of the ascended masters, our love-centered guides and friends, in the name of anybody that's listening. We appreciate it with all our hearts. And so it is. Amen. So next week, kids, I'll be here. And next week, am I going to be here? I don't know whether I'll be here.
Seconds.
I think I'm going to be here. But next week, we're going to talk about the same thing. Okay? I'll be here. I'll make sure of it. All right. take care of your sweet selves. We love you with all our hearts. And time to grow, huh? Take care of yourselves. All right. Bye-bye. Love ya. Here we go. Oh, what do I punch first? Here.